Good evening, I am back. I am your host, Jack Remington, the Jack Remington Political Analyst channel. Today's video is the current topic of the day, week and month, end of the year, blockbuster headline. I'm going to take the New York Post, and the article is called Meet the Four Dem-picked Colorado justices who kicked Trump off the ballot, end of quote, by Melissa Cohen, published on December 20th. I'll read part of this with you. Quote, 4 liberal Colorado Supreme Court justices were behind a landmark ruling Monday night that former President Donald Trump would not be allowed to appear on the 2024 presidential ballot in the state. The Democrat-appointed justices who made the decision include 3 Ivy League graduates, 2 of whom were wrongfully accused of harassment and discrimination, as well as the first Latina and openly gay woman to serve on Colorado's highest court. Wow. Their ruling marks the first time in history that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which disqualifies insurrectionists from office, has been used to ban a presidential candidate from appearing on the ballot. Together, Justices Richard L. Gabriel, Melissa Hart, Monica Marquez, William Hood III said they had little difficulty in determining the events of January 6, 2021 constituted an insurrection and that Trump did engage in the alleged rebellion. Below, the New York Post delves into the careers of the 4 justices who formed the majority opinion, 4-3, razor thin. So it's got a picture here of all 7 justices, but I think they got the wrong picture of the first lady that's standing up, as Melissa Hart used a photo of the different lady down here. I'll put the screenshot up here. I think they got the wrong picture of the wrong justice here. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. And I'll link the article in the description below and you can read it for yourself. 1,810 comments. I'm only going to read a couple comments. The best comment by leaps and bounds was 713 upvotes from 2 days ago. From Flatbush Expat, so it's probably someone that's not living here anymore. Quote, whether you like Trump or not, the idea that you can be removed from the ballot for a crime you were neither indicted nor convicted for should be chilling. Politicians and the media have referred to Trump's actions as an insurrection, but no one has seemed to find a way to indict him for it. If you can't convict him of an insurrection or rebellion, you certainly can't apply the punishment for it. Megan writes, quote, goose and gander and slippery slope. Using their methods and reasoning, any court can decide to leave Biden off the ballot for violating the Constitution without a trial. For example, his student loan forgiveness violates separation of powers because he had no authority or dereliction of duty for the immigration fiasco. It's not well written, but you get the message. Liberals Lie writes, quote, the facts you laid out did not seem to matter to these fake 4 judges. They seem to think that Trump was guilty without being proved guilty in a court of law. This is a major flaw. The judges should be removed for abuse of power. They are not judges, they are activists. That's a pretty good reply. But when you keep pitting the replies, it's okay, but then it starts going to the dogs, like most comment sections do. And then after that, it just, commenters are playing semantics. Well, he doesn't need to be convicted of a crime. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, blah, blah, blah. So that seems to be the crux of the case. So to get rid of that argument, okay, I'm going to put some articles up here for you to look at. Take a look. From the New York Times, quote, Myanmar's coup and its aftermath explained, end quote. The subheading reads, quote, the military seized power in February of 2021. Now pro-democracy forces are waging what they call a revolutionary war against the junta, end quote. This was 23 days after January 6th that they keep harping about. And I have a video from on a different channel. Good evening, I'm your host, Jack Remington of Jack Remington Political Analyst. Today is week 4 of the Joe Biden show, February 11th through February 18th. The executive order on blocking property with respect to the situation in Burma. I'm going to put this on 2 separate channels. This is going to definitely be on my Political Analyst channel, but I may have to put this on my crime channel as well, because what's the crime? I see something every day on some news feed. A lot of it's Yahoo, MSNBC, the alphabet news agencies, CBS, ABC, someone, Huffington Post, someone is publishing this thing about the January 6th insurrection. Now let me tell you what the real insurrection was in Myanmar, or formerly called Burma. When I was a boy growing up, for the first 55 years of my life, it was called Burma. They changed the country's name. It's their country. They can call it whatever they want. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, I, Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America, find that the situation in relation to Burma, and in particular of the February 1st, 2021 coup, which the military overthrew the democratically elected civilian government of Burma and unjustly arrested and detained government leaders, politicians, human rights defenders, journalists, and religious leaders, hereby rejecting the will of the people of Burma as expressed in the elections held in November 2020, and undermining the country's democratic transition and rule of law constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. Accordingly, I hereby order," and he goes through section 1, A1, A2, and then A, B, C, talks about all the property interests of the United States. I mean, I'll put the screenshots up here briefly. You can always stop the video and read them if you want to read them. And then on the third page, the government of Burma were on after February 2nd, 2021. And notice he called it Burma. They didn't even call it Myanmar. So, see, they're rushing through these executive orders and they're rushing through this legislation, and they must have fired all their proofreaders because they're going broke, or until they open up the piggy bank again. And they did that today, by the way. And he goes to section 2, section 3. I'll flash these up here, and you can stop the video to read these. It goes on and on and on. And section 7, section 8, section 9, section 10, section 11. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantial or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. Joseph R. Biden Jr. Doesn't even put President Biden underneath this. I counted 15 mistakes, typos that shouldn't be in here. I'm a paralegal. I went to paralegal school, University of Maryland, a major law school in that area of that country. Legal writing, I mean, when you work for a law firm and you start at the bottom like I did, you type the briefs up, you go to the courthouse, you file them, you file the briefs, you get the timestamp. You take it back, you put it in the case file. Then the attorney, if he or she decides that we got to do something about it, or they let it sit until the trial comes up. It's up to them. Okay? You're working for them. You're their assistant. They don't have time to dot the I's and cross the T's. Long story short, this Joe Biden, not one of those pages that I just put on the screen here, where you see the word insurrection. Because this thing here, they called it a coup in the opening statement here. Okay, and yes, it was a coup, and yes, they are correct. But it was really an insurrection as well. And that insurrection, and I understand there's been people that's died over there because of that. I haven't researched that part of it yet, but there's been some deaths over there because of this coup or insurrection. That's a real insurrection where they have a military and they arrest all the journalists. I mean, this thing that happened on January 6th was just immediately. It was like a rock concert gone wrong. Is all that was. Only gunfire. There was one shot fired by a firearm that entire 20 minutes or whatever it was, 16 minutes, whatever it was. It's when the Capitol officer panicked and shot that woman, Ashley Babbitt, a U.S. veteran, and shot her in the chest, and she died within minutes. Okay, that was the end. There was nobody there was armed. Now, the Washington Post tried to be slick and say that they found someone in the parking lot that had a gun underneath the seat. Well, that was an unrelated matter. That was somebody that was illegally parking somewhere like 3 miles away in the southeast district of Washington, D.C. Had nothing to do with the January 6th thing. But they had to sneak that in there, thinking that people don't understand that. People are not from Washington, D.C. like I am, and people don't know southeast and northwest, west of Rock Creek Park. You're okay. It's where the white people live, where people that got jobs live. The people in Northwest support the other 3 quadrants of Washington, D.C., and I'm from D.C. I can say that. Now, January 6th, I didn't see not one report. I didn't see not one incident where there was a kidnapping. I didn't see one thing where some girl got fondled or got, next to being raped, like this Occupy Wall Street that happened under Barack Obama's kind of, hinting, encouraging, we need to do something about the inequities of income and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there were a lot of reports about that, and the media squashed it. And these people, they believe everything the media says. They believe that Orange Man was bad. They believe that Donald Trump was the real criminal. Donald Trump was not the criminal. The criminals are in the Democrat Party, and they're now in Washington, D.C. It's a complete swamp now. And the Republicans, well, Jack, I heard this last week. Well, you Republicans aren't doing anything. Yeah, because they might need to cheat too sometime. What else? What other reason could it be? Okay, and they're afraid of the Democrats. They've always have been afraid of the Democrats. Why? I don't know. Let's go back to the video at hand here before I lose my cool here. Notice of the continuation of the national emergency with respect to Libya. Joe Biden's getting pressure from the military-industrial complex. Donald Trump parked them, rightfully so, brought the troops home, and all of a sudden, all these admirals and generals, all of a sudden, well, that Donald Trump, that piece of shit, he is Orange Man bad, blah, blah, because they couldn't make any money off him anymore. Donald Trump stopped all that. The waste, fraud, and the corruption and abuse, he stopped that. And I got to Andrew's video about openthebooks.com. He talks about that in detail, about what Donald Trump did to the military-industrial complex. And believe me, look what happened to JFK. They fight back their way.
We found they spent $9,300 on a club leather chair. They spent $1 million on PBR, the Professional Bull Riders Association. The Pentagon spent down their lobster tail and snow crab budget, spending $4.6 million in the last month on lobster tail and snow crab. And so we dug a little deeper. And when we reached out for comment, the Pentagon admitted to spending $25 million on lobster tail and snow crab over an 18-month period. We also published at the Wall Street Journal an annual figure of what the Pentagon was spending on expensive coffee cups. Up to $1,218 on these expensive coffee cups. And Senator Chuck Grassley picked that up, wrote an oversight letter to the Department of Defense. He got the program stopped, but they admitted they had spent $350,000 on that program of expensive coffee cups. And I'd feel a lot better about all of this spending at the Department of Defense if they could pass their audit. The president, the audit of the Pentagon's been on the books for decades, but nobody enforced it. Well, President Trump did enforce it. He mandated it. The Pentagon spent a year. There was 1,200 auditors. They spent $400 million on the audit, and the Pentagon flunked it. We need a transparency revolution. We need to challenge the culture of corruption in Washington, D.C. I just want to close with the following story, and it is good news. I received a call 2 weeks ago from the White House, from the Executive Office of the President, the Office of Management and Budget. And they said that for the first time in our nation's history, included in the President's budget to Congress is a chapter on the elimination of wasteful spending. And they said that our work, our oversight work at openthebooks.com had helped inspire that chapter.
Quote, Myanmar's military, which seized power in a coup d'etat in February 2021, has ruthlessly sought to consolidate its authority since then, killing and imprisoned opponents and attacking innocent civilians. So, what they did, I'll make this really quick as I possibly can. Okay, quote, how the coup was carried out. Before Parliament could endorse the election results, and it was close to 85% that the lady who was running Myanmar since 2015, they smelled a rigged election, and people were upset. Quote, before Parliament could endorse the election results, soldiers surrounded the building and rounded up government figures, including Miss Aung San Suu Kyi, the president, U Win Mint, cabinet ministers, and the chief ministers of several regions, as well as other politicians and activists. Okay, the military, citing its constitutional authority to declare a national emergency, seized control of major institutions, suspended most television broadcasts, and canceled domestic and international flights. Telephone and internet access were suspended. The stock market and commercial banks were closed, and long lines formed outside ATMs in Yangon, the largest city and former capital. People ran to markets to stock up on food and other supplies. And I'll put all this up here for you to take a look for yourself. It goes on and on here. Now, what the junta brought with them, the military junta, they brought tanks, helicopters, 11,000 soldiers that surrounded several places, including the Myanmar Parliament building where they were trying to certify the elections, okay? They rounded up 2,500 civilians, and 16,500 have been arrested. And it was mostly on that day. Literally, over 10,000 people died within the first hour of this junta. As far as I know, from what I can read from New York Times and other articles, not one of the parliament people, not the president or her staffers or her personal guards, none of them had guns. Okay, so let's call it what it is. Okay, this was a real insurrection. I don't care what Politico says. That lady, I'm going to try to find the article and stick it on the credits here. It was an insurrection. A lady who, a 20-year-old intern, knew nothing, but Politico published her article because they're trying to badmouth Donald Trump. Okay, this thing in Myanmar, that's the real insurrection. Okay, and Joe Biden stumbled. He couldn't get the words out. Okay, so that is an insurrection. Now, did Donald Trump bring 11,000 soldiers with machine guns and truck guns and bayonets and nightsticks and grenades and smoke bombs? Did Donald Trump do that? Did he surround the hospitals? Did he shut down the internet? Did he shut down the TV stations? Did he surround the building and take everybody hostage and start rounding them out one by one? Did he do that? Well, we all know the answer is no to all this. I could go on and on here and bore you to tears with this. What's upsetting with this New York Times are the comments. It's only got 104 comments, because I guess they closed it right away. And these comments were closed the day of the insurrection in Myanmar, February 1st, 2021. Nata Yusiki, too, writes from Manhattan, and I quote, glad this didn't happen a few weeks ago where we never would have gotten rid of Carrot Top, end of quote. Now, you know who Carrot Top he's referring to, right? Can you believe this comment? Wow. Laura from Portland writes, quote, if the U.S. election had not been partially undermined with the spread of disinformation and the events of January 6th, would this have even happened in Myanmar? I wonder. It's pretty clear our cosplay coup was a template for the real one. End of quote. I can't believe the New York Times let this one slip through. Bunbury writes from Florida, quote, this happens in far too many countries where the military becomes one of the best paying and most secure of jobs. End of quote. Think about that. Britain, France, Spain, the 17, 18, 1900s. Think about that. Russia, not so much. We'll see. Daniel Kaufman writes from Fairfax, Virginia, quote, the United States has a former president who may be looking for a coup-friendly country to take over. I wonder, does the Myanmar military want to play, quote, who wants to buy a billionaire, end of quote? We know, Daniel Kaufman, you're in Fairfax, Virginia now. It's the bluest of the blue. It used to be the reddest state when I was a boy growing up. That's my sister's state. I still have friends and relatives in Fairfax Station, in Fairfax County, Virginia. And the ones that are like me, they left. They moved out years ago. Okay, they saw what was coming. Okay, you're a part of the problem in this country. You hate Donald Trump so much that you're willing to sacrifice everything. You're willing to destroy our constitutional republic just because you hate Donald Trump. The media told you to hate him, and you hate him. You're worse than kindergarten kids, these Democrats and these activist judges. Terrible. I subscribed, give me time $1 for the 4-month special, just so I can mess with them in the comments, but they delete all my comments. We must wait for approval, and I'll never get approved. That's okay, though. They'll slip one of these days and let something through that's going to stick. B. Miller writes from New York, quote, absolutely. Maybe that's why they did it. Now is the time to get away with a coup while the world is distracted by COVID-19, and especially the USA, with our own close brush with authoritarian rule, end of quote. Jesse from Newark writes, quote, this is a major challenge for Joe Biden. If he appears toothless and ineffective in the destruction of democracy, that perception of him will carry throughout his administration. We will have to wait and see, end of quote. Jeez. Theory Ether, this lady from France, she writes back here, quote, at Jesse, if the military isn't popular, and I bet that's the case, they won't last much longer in power, end of quote. You know, you must be a really dumbass broad lady. You know, who's going to throw out this junta? And they're still there. Okay, this is almost 3 years. Okay, and they're still there. I see no signs of them losing power. Okay, so enough of that, and I'll put this up here for you to take a look at.